She gave a stranger her scarf, but 7 days later, death came for me. I never should have opened that door. I should have known better. But that day had started like any other, a gray morning that drew out shadows in the corners of my tiny apartment. The air felt thick, almost suffocating. I could hear the old radiator groaning, wishing for warmth, but all I felt was an icy chill creeping up my spine that I was just sipping my coffee, the bitter taste mingling with my thoughts. Was I really going to get through another day of dull routines? Just then, my phone buzzed, an alert, a stranger needed help. She was wrapped in a dark coat, but her face glowed with urgency. The scarf I lent her, a rich plum color, slipped from my fingers as I watched her rush off, disappearing into the misty street. I brushed it off, thinking nothing of it, but the following days swallowed me whole. It began innocently enough, a fleeting shadow darting past my window. A strange sound, like someone whispering secrets directly into my ear, sent shivers racing down my body. I could almost feel them brushing against my skin. My evenings, once filled with laughter from sitcoms, became like stifled cries trapped behind closed doors. Each creak of the floorboards felt ominous in the growing darkness that I tried to shake it off. I flip-flopped between rational thoughts and wild imaginings. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was just tired. Yet, the whispers grew louder, echoing through my dreams, haunting my thoughts like an itch that wouldn't go away. The night I found the scarf returned. No one was there, just that silky fabric, tinged with a hint of something metallic, a whisper of iron. My heart raced. Each tick of the clock became a countdown. I could feel my breath hitching, my chest tightening, as if something invisible was tightening around me. My front door creaked, the sound rattling me. And then I swear I heard my name, softly, insidiously curling through the air. I froze. I focused on the sound. Silence. Pure, suffocating silence, then, a crash. My heart lurched. Something had fallen in the other room. I jumped to my feet, shaky hands gripping the edge of the table. What was happening? My breath quickened. Was someone in my apartment? I crept toward the sound, each step feeling like a leap into darkness. I reached out for the doorknob to the room, my fingers trembling. My mind screamed for me to turn back. But my curiosity outweighed the fear, and I twisted it. The door swung open, revealing a shadowed figure, a silhouette against the dim light of the hallway. Everything froze. Time stood still. I gasped, my body unable to move as the figure began to step forward. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. My breath caught in my throat as the figure stepped into the light. It was a woman, her features obscured by the darkness that clung to her like a shroud. But it was the scarf that sent chills rippling through me, the plum fabric twisting around her neck, taut and threatening. The woman's face seemed too pale, as if the life had been leached from her by some unseen force. "Help me," she whispered, her voice quivering like gossamer threads. But something in her eyes held me captive, a flicker of madness, a spark of desperation that rippled with unearthly dread. "Who are you?" I managed, the words escaping my lips like a prayer, though deep down I felt they were a sacrilege. "You gave it to me," she said, her gaze darting around the room. "It has a price." A sudden gust of wind, unnatural and cold, swept through the open door, rattling frames and swallowing the light. The woman didn't flinch. "You must listen. It comes for you next." Her eyes widened momentarily, revealing dark circles beneath the surface, a reminder that whatever had consumed her was lurking, just out of sight, and now creeping toward me. Before I could voice my horror, she lunged forward, clutching my wrist with freezing fingers. It feeds on your fears. Don't let it in. The desperation in her voice morphed into a choked scream, ear-splitting and raw. Her grip tightened, and visions cascaded through my mind. Shadowy figures with soulless eyes hovered in the corners, clawing at reality itself, waiting for the right moment to strike. That in a flash of instinctual terror, I yanked my wrist free, stumbling back. I felt my heart race, each pulse drumming in my ears, drowning out her pleas. "Get out!" I shouted, my own voice sounding foreign to me, echoing against the walls that seemed to press in closer, but she wasn't leaving. Instead, she laughed, a haunting cackle that morphed into sobs. "You will never be free," she cried as her form began to ripple and distort like a mirage, the edges of her body losing resolution until she was merely a collection of shadows. That I felt a cold draft creep up my spine as a heaviness descended in the room. The whispers returned, more frenetic now, darting through my mind with fevered intensity. "It feeds on your fears." The chorus sang, the words threading into my very soul. That I turned to flee, but the door slammed shut with a force that rattled the house. Panic clawed at me. I grasped at the knob, but it wouldn't budge. The air grew thick, every breath tasting metallic, heavy-tainted. I raked my nails against the wood, desperation spilling from me. And then I saw it. A shadow creeping along the wall, a darkness so deep, it seemed to pulse, alive and hungry. My retinas threatened to burn as I realized what it was, a figure, scarred and twisted, emerging from the depths of the shadows with a grotesque smile carved across its face. No eyes, just infinite voids where humanity once resided. "Did you forget about me?" it whispered. The voice coiled around me, both inviting and repulsive. I couldn't separate it from the tortured wails of the woman who had come to me. In that moment, my legs uncoiled, urging me to run, and I dashed toward the window, clawing at the frame, desperate for freedom. The thing, however, was quicker. I fell, my body colliding desperately with the ground as it lunged, the ghost of a laugh echoing in my ears, and then, the whispers began again. They grew louder, reverberating through the very fabric of reality. "You will be lost," they sang, a harrowing tune that hinted at ultimate despair. Suddenly, everything stopped. The room fell into suffocating silence. My gaze turned toward the woman, now mere inches from me. "It's here," she croaked, her voice tremulous, quaking under the weight of her words. "And it's hungry." Before I could plead for survival, the walls exploded with shadow. A chorus of faces, each twisted in eternal anguish, surged toward me. I could feel their cold hands grasping at me, pulling me back into the dark. "Let go," the woman shrieked, her voice breaking through the chaos. "Let it take you. You need to." In that moment, the world collapsed into an all-consuming darkness, devouring everything in its path. The last flicker of light disappeared, and I was left alone, drowning in oblivion, with the shadows tightening around me. And then, a piercing scream erupted from my own throat, echoing against the irrevocable void, and oh! But as I fell, everything faded to black. Time slipped away, and in that silence, I could still hear its lowly weaving, a chilling melody, a faint echo of my own voice. The question remained, lingering like a shroud: when will you come home? The darkness enveloped me entirely, whispering secrets of ancient tales long lost, hunting for the next soul willing to let in the shadows. And suddenly, I awoke, gasping for air, but I was not alone. Beneath me, where I had fallen, an inscription glowed faintly in the dark, the letters twisting and curling unnaturally. "You gave a stranger a scarf, but can you give me your soul?" As I tried to scream, there was a knock on the door, and I knew, with chilling certainty, that it was far more than just a knock. The knock resonated in my bones, a deep, morbid rhythm that felt as if it belonged not to this world but to something far more sinister. I froze, heart pounding fiercely in my chest, as though it recognized the primal danger in that sound, but something worse lurked behind my fear. I was no longer just haunted, I had become a host for the darkness. "Open the door," a voice commanded, smooth yet foreign, creeping through the wooden barrier and wrapping its fingers around my spine. I hesitated, the memory of the woman's pale face swirling in my mind. Her warning echoed. "It comes for you next." I glanced at the inscription on the floor, letters glowing like dying embers. "Can you give me your soul?" My eyes darted back to the door, a gnawing dread clawing at the back of my mind. There was no locking it out. The world I once knew had unraveled, and the shadows were rising. "Let me in," the voice smirked, transforming in character, echoing with dissonance that made my skin crawl. It wasn't just an invitation, it was an incantation, a spell wrought to ensnare my mind. "You know you're curious." With trembling fingers, I approached the door, every footstep betraying the growing urge to turn back and hide. "Who are you?" I managed, my voice trembling and insubstantial, almost as if I were trying to find ground in a dream. The knock came again, this time heavier, resonating in the hollow space of my chest. "I'm your salvation, dear," the voice purred wickedly. "I can help you, but you need to stop resisting that." I leaned closer, compelled by an invisible force, peering through the peephole. I expected to see the twisted figure I had glimpsed before, but what I saw made my breath hitch in a tight gasp. A man stood there, tall and handsome, shrouded in an aura of dark elegance that both terrified and intrigued me. His eyes sparkled with an unnatural light, glinting like shards of glass. He smiled, but there was something off about it, like a predator marking its territory. "Open, and we will chat," he suggested, his voice dripping with honeyed persuasion. "You are not alone anymore." Against all instinct, I turned the knob slowly, the wood creaking like bones in the night. The door swung wide, and the man stepped inside, filling the room with an unsettling light that seemed to flicker and pulse. No. I shrieked, scrambling back, but he was faster. He glided across the floor, a step so seamless it seemed he soared. With an elegant motion, he laid a hand on my shoulder, a warmth blooming beneath his touch, making me feel both comforted and afraid. "You don't need to fear the dark," he murmured, tilting his head, his gaze penetrating my mind. "It only seeks to reveal the truth." I felt the walls tighten around me again, shadows dancing at the edges, fueled by my escalating anxiety. "Get out!" I cried, struggling against his grip, but the shadows responded, swirling hungrily. I could hear the woman's tortured laughter in the back of my mind, merging with the whispers that begged me to let go. "Fear is your greatest enemy." His voice now dripped with an unsettling serenity, a mockery of reassurance. "You can embrace it, or it will sound the death knell of your sanity. Be with me," he coaxed, a smirk ghosting his lips. "I can give you power, but you must trust me completely." The shadows inched closer, and I caught glimpses of faces, lost souls, their eyes pleading, distorted by sorrow. The connection was palpable, they clamored for my attention, beckoning me to succumb and join them. I was standing on a precipice, fear breathing hot against my neck. "Join me," the man said, leaning closer, his breath laced with something intoxicatingly sweet. "Let the darkness inside you." All flashes of defiance crumbled beneath the weight of temptation. I could feel the darkness seeping into my veins, both terrifying and exhilarating, creating a dichotomy I couldn't resist. The shadows danced, tightening around me, pulling me deeper into the abyss of my own desires. As the edges of my vision blurred, I felt a cold twist of panic. My life became a mere butterfly caught in an inferno, consumed from within, and as I looked into the man's eyes, they shone with a temptation that felt both familiar and grotesque. But just as I was about to surrender, a violent shattering pierced through the air. The window exploded, and a gust of icy breath swept into the room, freezing my very soul. I staggered back, terrified, the man's grip slipping as the voices grew frantic. No. You can't. He roared, losing his poise, revealing the predator hidden in his facade. The whispers turned to screams, a cacophony beyond comprehension as a dark figure loomed behind him, so vast it eclipsed the light. I turned to bolt toward the door, but the darkness surged forward, closing its cold, clamoring fingers around my heart. The man's expression morphed into something monstrous, a grin stretching wider, revealing jagged teeth that echoed the desperate cries of the shadows. "Your choice is not over," he hissed, the chaos surrounding me intensifying, and in that terrifying instant, a voice cried out from the depths. "I will have you." With a surge of adrenaline, I leaped forward, heart racing as I reached for the door handle, praying for an escape. But the frame flickered, warping under the weight of the darkness. With a final glance over my shoulder, terror seized me as I saw the faces of those lost loom closer, my own reflection twisted among them, whispering secrets of despair, and just like that, the man lunged, an unholy roar escaping his lips, plunging into the dark whirlpool that swallowed everything. Run. The woman's voice screamed in my mind, louder than ever, urging me to push past the surface of dread, as the room twisted and turned. As I flung open the door, a gaping maw of shadows yawned out before me, a painful choice rippling through my essence, to leap into the unknown or surrender to the grasping fingers of dreadful darkness, and as the door slammed behind me, sealing the horror within, I was left standing at the crossroads, knowing that whatever awaited was far worse than I could have ever imagined. Suddenly, a hand joined mine from the shadows, pulling me into an embrace as a haunting laugh echoed behind me. I turned, terror-stricken, as I felt the warmth of the darkness encroach closer, drawing me into a nightmare from which there was no waking. Welcome home, the voice slithered. And I was still not free. The chilling wind whipped through the corridor as I stumbled backward, a dread-filled gasp escaping my throat. My heart pounded as I glanced around, searching for sanctuary, but the shadows closed in, looming over me like a suffocating shroud. Where will you run? The whispered echo of the dark figure taunted, the voice reverberating through the empty hallways. I could feel the air thickening, heavy with a malevolence that seemed alive. It seeped into my skin, tightening like a noose. In that moment, everything felt off balance, as if the very fabric of reality was fraying at the seams. I darted down the corridor, my pulse racing, every instinct screaming for me to escape, but ahead, the flickering overhead lights cast monstrous silhouettes that twisted and squirmed like dancing phantoms. There was no escape from this house, no sanctuary within these walls. I tried to focus, controlling my breath as I recalled the woman's agonized expression, the way her eyes had brimmed with unshed tears when she warned me. "It comes for you next," she had said. A wave of nausea rose within me, and I could hear her laughter bubbling beneath the surface of my mind, mixed with incoherent whispers. Suddenly, a door to my right burst open, spilling a swathe of shadow, and I instinctively flinched. My vision sharpened as a figure stepped forward, a girl, no older than 15, with hair black as coal cascading around her pale, gaunt face. She was wet, clad in what appeared to be a flowing dress, dripping shadows that pooled at her feet in a whirlpool of blackness. "Help me!" she cried, her voice trembling as it bounced off the walls. A sense of recognition flickered in my thoughts. She was one of the lost, her face reflecting a blend of desperation and peculiar innocence. "Please, I need to get out of here," I stammered, looking back to where the darkness loomed, waiting for my resolve to crumble before it. "Don't listen to them," she pleaded, stretching out her hand. I could see the tremors in her fingers as they beckoned me closer. "They will only take you. We cannot be free." Before I could respond, the shadows spiraled behind her, tendrils writhing like serpents, and in that instant, it felt as if the darkness was listening, hungry for our light. I hesitated, staring into her haunting eyes. "What happened to you? How did you get trapped?" I asked, fear surging through me like electric shockwaves. "They lied. They showed me dreams," the girl whispered, her voice a distant echo. "They fed on my desires. I thought I could be like them, like you." But her eyes glimmered with horror, and suddenly she was looking past me, mouth agape. My heart dropped as I felt an unnatural chill crawl up my spine, a visceral dread as I turned to find myself face to face with the man, no longer pretending to be a savior, but fully revealed as a beast shrouded in shadows. His beautifully cruel features were sharper now, smirking, his edges shimmering in the dim light. "Ah, little friend, you found a new playmate," he mocked, tilting his head as the girl pressed herself against the wall, terror radiating from her like ripples on a dark pond. "No. Please, don't. I won't join you." I spat, gathering my resolve even as the darkness encroached closer. But the girl beside me trembled, her features twisting in fear as if sensing the depths of despair unraveling within me. "Trust yourself. You must find the mirror," she shouted suddenly, desperation coloring her voice, but the shadows wrapped tighter around us, drowning out her words. "Mirror, mirror," I murmured. "What mirror?" But as I spoke, another chilling laugh pealed through the air, intermingling with the shadows that chased my every thought. "Why search for a reflection when you already know where you belong?" The man sneered, his eyes glinting with a sickly delight. Shadows unfurled behind him like wings, swirling together to reveal faces, bystanders, friends, loved ones, each twisted and in agony, drowning in their own darkness. My mind raced, hearkening back to fleeting moments of connect. I own a scarf given to a stranger in fading light, an offering of warmth in an encroaching chill. The memory tangled with horror as I recognized desecrated figures, remnants of my past, lost to the lure of the void. As dread coursed through me, I felt the pull of the girl by my side, a fragile tether amidst the consuming shadows. "Don't let it take you," she screamed, eyes wide with panic, but her plea barely penetrated the storm of darkness worsening around us. "Falling into despair is how it claims you," she continued. "Run, find the mirror. It holds the key." But before I could grasp her meaning, a piercing shriek erupted from the shadows, drowning my thoughts. I glanced back toward the man, who began to step forward, wicked delight glimmering in his eyes as he raised a hand, tendrils of darkness swirling around him. In a heartbeat, time collapsed. I turned, forcing my feet to move, sprinting once more down the hallway as the walls warped against my escape, the very house itself seeming to shift and pulse with anger. "Where are you, reflection?" I gasped, searching desperately for a sign that would guide me through this nightmare. But the shadows closed in behind me, gnashing teeth echoing with hunger, and as I hit a wall dark, solid, and unforgiving like a tomb, I spun around to find the nothingness behind me closing in, aware of my fear, a relentless predator reveling in its hunt. But just when I thought all had been lost, a mirror stood ajar in the hallway, a cracked, dilapidated reflection reflecting a twisted world beyond. Without thinking, I lunged for it, the fragmented glass suddenly erupting with an otherworldly energy, and then, I felt the hand of the girl grasping mine, pulling me closer, as the tendrils of darkness swarmed us both together. She cried, and in that instant light burst forth from the cracked surface. But before I could dive in, a deep growl reverberated through the air, a voice that hissed like the blades of a guillotine, echoing horrifying promises. "Foolish children! You cannot escape your fate." With a deafening blow, the force from the mirror surged forward, enveloping us, but just as the shadows lunged, I caught one last glimpse of the man's eyes, swirling darkness, alive with fury and hunger, and I realized, as we plunged into the madness, that I hadn't even begun to comprehend the horror awaiting us on the other side. And with a final chilling laugh, the darkness swallowed us whole. The darkness enveloped us like a thick shroud, and I felt the remnants of the fractured world dissolve beneath my feet. The sensation was dizzying, as if I were both falling and climbing at the same time, suspended in a plane of incomprehensible void. The girl's grip tightened on my hand, her fingers cold and fragile, but her determination burned through the icy fear that clamored in my chest. Light erupted around us, blinding and fierce, twisting into shapes as if reality itself was inky water, swirling and crashing. I squeezed my eyes shut against it, gripping the girl's hand tighter, praying she was still there, praying we would find our way out. "Hold on!" I shouted, my voice lost in the cacophony of chaos. The light began to dim, and a new sensation washed over me, a coldness that seeped into my bones. I opened my eyes to find ourselves standing in a mocking, twisted version of the hallway we had fled. The air was electric, pulsing with shadows that flickered like fragmented memories, each whispering secrets meant to shatter sanity. "Where are we?" I gasped, panting. The landscape was warped, a fabric of darkness stitched with random bursts of light, like stars in a blackened sky mourning their own fate. "That I don't know," the girl replied, her expression stricken with fear. "But we have to keep moving." We took hesitant steps forward, each footfall resounding against a hollow ground, every sound magnified within the silence that reigned desperately. As I scanned the eerie surroundings, fleeting glimmers rushed past us, shapes that swirled in the air, taunting, laughing. I shivered, the shadows darting in and out of focus like phantoms slipping past my vision. "Whispers!" I exclaimed, as I caught phrases skittering through the air, haunting and relentless. "They're telling us something, no!" she cried out, fear stark in her voice, echoing the dread that grasped my heart. "Listen not to them. They will lead you astray." Just beyond us, a darkness coiled around an ornate door that shimmered with an otherworldly glow, an impossible door, as ethereal as the girl. It pulsed like a heartbeat, whispering promises of forgotten dreams, dreams that beckoned and taunted all at once. What if it leads to freedom? I suggested, my pulse racing as the image of escape clawed at my mind. No. She shouted, pulling on my arm. "It's a trap. You have to remember what we're fighting against." But I felt the air shift. The magnetic pull of that dark door was magnetic, and it roared with a need I couldn't dismiss. I turned toward the door, a light drawing me closer, every instinct screaming against the shadowy tendrils reaching towards us, longing to ensnare and consume. Suddenly, the wailing intensified, crescendoing into a cacophony of lost souls. My heart raced, threatened by the way reality warped around us. Shadows danced like marionettes crafted from despair, bowing and curtsying in sinister delight. I heard familiar voices mixed amongst the screams, each one a stark reminder of who I had lost, a siren's call tugging at my heart. I caught a glimpse of a face, one I recognized all too well. It was Heron, old friend, her expression frozen in horror, pleading silently with wide, hollow eyes. The clamor rose, piercing through the veil of my sanity. Do not listen. The girl's voice was a fierce crack cutting through my thoughts. "Trust me," but the whispers echoed louder, words curling around me like smoke. Join us in freedom, join us in oblivion, no." I shouted, shaking my head violently, gripping the girl's hand with all the strength I had left. The faces in the shadows contorted in mockery as I faltered, torn between saving myself and protecting her from the shadow's all-consuming buzz. "Don't let it win. Please," she cried, tears brimming her eyes, ghostly reflections in the void. "We have to go." With renewed resolve pounding in my chest, I started to pull away from the specters, from the hollow promises of the door's enamoring glow. But as I turned back toward the corridor, I heard it again, a low growl emanating like thunder from the very walls themselves. "Children. You think you can escape?" It was the voice of the man, encompassing us, echoing like a haunting melody that filled the void with tension. "You entered my domain willingly. You are not the first to believe you could elude your fate. You are merely pawns in my game. Run!" I yelled, pivoting once more toward an opening that glimmered in the distance, an unyielding beacon that felt just out of reach. Dark figures began to converge, their laughter melding into a chilling harmony, reveling in the despair they sowed within me. As we sprinted, I could feel the shadows reaching for us, claws of darkness tearing at my back. But desperation fueled my racing heart, and we broke into a strange room filled wall to wall with mirrors, each reflecting not our image but dark, grotesque forms twisting themselves until they resembled us, harrowing echoes of who we could become. No. I shouted, horrified by the sight. 1,000 possible fates cavorted in the glass, their faces hollowed, eyes dark voids yearning for escape. We were trapped, surrounded by reflections of our own fears, and I felt an overwhelming wave of nausea as I turned toward the girl, realizing too late that the shadows had already seeped into her mind. She was staring at one of the mirrors, horror etched across her face, as though something was clawing its way out of the darkness inside her. "Don't look," I pleaded, grabbing her arm and shaking her as the shadows writhed eagerly, sensing her fear, but she was entranced by the mirror's whispers, lost in the promises of freedom veiled in the guise of shadows. "It can take us home," she murmured, both terrified and compelled. No. I shouted, pulling her back, but it was too late. With a scream that shattered the silence, she broke from my grip, lunging toward the mirror, the glass swallowing her whole. "No! No!" I screamed, rushing toward her, but the darkness pooled beneath me, locking my feet in surrender, and then I heard my own voice whispering from the depths of the mirror, echoing her words, morphing into hopeless laughter beneath the shadows. Join us, my heart leapt, suffocating under the weight of realization and desperation. The room began to spin, mirrors distorting reality around me, and as the laughter deepened, I staggered backward, knowing that the true horror of this place wasn't the darkness outside but the violent truth hidden within. And before I could scream, the mirrors shattered, all at once, unleashing a torrent of chilling laughter, a cascade of shadows that enveloped me as I plummeted into darkness, mouth gaping in a silent scream while my mind spun with the knowledge that whatever awaited me on the other side was far more terrifying than I had ever imagined. The darkness swallowed me whole, a viscous tide that rolled over my senses like a shroud. I felt weightless, my body adrift in that formless ether, every thought consumed by the echo of the girl's name, a desperate whisper lost to the void. How far was I drifting from her? Was she still there, trapped in the mirrored nightmare, or had something sinister already taken her in my absence? The air around me crackled with static, buzzing like an unseen entity, alive with malevolence, and the inky blackness whispered secrets of forgotten fears. I grasped at the remnants of a coherent though thin imprint of her hand, the warmth that had anchored me amidst the chaos. But that warmth was fading, overtaken by a chilling wind that wrapped around me, squeezing tighter with each heartbeat. Suddenly, I was thrust into a different world, a room, unrecognizably warped, with walls that pulsed. Strange figures twisted and writhed like marionettes being manipulated by unseen strings. Their faces were obscured by shadows, but I could feel their eyes upon me, hungry, yearning, trapped in a cycle of torment, forever reaching but never touching. Help us, a voice rasped, a soft plea that floated among the cacophony. It was a pleading whisper woven tightly with desperation, and as I turned toward the sound, I glimpsed a figure at the edge of the shadows. A woman, painfully familiar, her face a mask of anguish that sent shards of ice racing down my spine. Is that you? I gasped, stepping forward, but the moment I neared, she dissolved into a fog, revealing only the wreckage of memory, a million fragmented reflections, each one a reminder of what I lost, echoing the same desperate plea, "Please help us, who are you?" I shouted, and my voice fractured in the thickness of the air, drifting into the shadows. I felt the weight of those countless gazes, their despair a tangible thing, gripping my heart with a vice-like hold. "Join us," they echoed, the darkness infiltrating my thoughts, sinking claws deeper into my psyche. "Embrace the truth, embrace the escape." Images flashed through my mind, vivid and chaotic, a rush of memories intertwined with horror and dread. Every face I had known, every memory twisted and warped into grotesque visages of pain and surrender. It was a gallery of the damned, each soul reflecting torment, almost taunting me for my weakness. "No!" I screamed, slapping my hands to my ears to drown the haunting chorus. "I won't join you. I can't help you." A child's voice chimed in the distance, plaintive and sorrowful. It ripped through the symphony of despair, drawing my attention. I whirled around, the air around me crackling with energy. "Who said that?" I demanded, pushing through the shadows, desperate to find the source. I stumbled forward, and as I did, the shadows coalesced into a path, vibrant and surreal, a corridor of pulsating hues. Then I saw her, another girl, this one barely a teenager, standing just beyond my reach, her eyes wide with a haunting clarity. But before I could utter a word, she shook her head frantically, despair etched into her features. "Don't come closer. He will know you're here," she warned, the air thickening with an unseen tension. "He watches from the darkness. He waits for the lost." "Who is he?" My voice cracked, fear coursing through me like poison. "Tell me, Eldritch," she hissed, her breath hitching as if she had summoned a name too monstrous to utter. It hung between us like a loaded weapon, tinged with dread. "He feasts on those who stray too close to the mirror. He's been waiting for you." As if in response, the shadows around us darkened, swirling with an ominous rhythm that pulsed in time with my heartbeat. I felt the air change again, the oppressive weight coiling tighter around me, suffocating in its ferocity. "Run!" she urged, backing away as the shadows crept closer, curling around her ankles. I looked back, my instincts screaming as the darker fragments shifted and stirred, revealing far too many gleaming, hungry eyes, filling the space where the girl had once stood. "No!" I cried, stretching my hand toward her, desperate not to lose another. But it was too late. In a flash of shadow, she vanished, leaving a void where her shimmer had been a betrayal of hope stolen by the clutches of darkness. I turned, breaking into a desperate sprint down the corridor where the colors twisted and distorted, the air roiling with errant whispers promising pain and release. But as I ran, the laughter rose around me deep, resonant, an echoing reminder that I was deep within the domain of Eldritch. And the more I fled, the closer I felt his presence, a void with a pulse, lurking within my mind, pulling at the very seams of my sanity. Flee, little one. The mocking voice growled, reverberating through the corridor, vibrating the very air around me. You can run from the darkness, but it knows your name. With every step, I pushed harder, desperation fueling my flight, when suddenly, amid the chaos, I stumbled upon a vast wall covered in mirrors, each one reflecting a different fragment of reality. I caught sight of the girl again, but she wasn't alone. Over her shoulder, behind the darkness, something larger loomed, its form obscured in deep shadows, a gaping maw stretching wide, lined with twisted teeth that dripped with malice. Help me, she whispered, and I felt my heart shatter, the specter of hope fading against the unyielding tide of dread. But before I could react, a mirror shattered behind me with a resounding crash, and a cold hand reached through the glass, grasping at me with horrifying anticipation. As its grip latched onto my wrist, a sickening truth unfurled within me. Here was no escape, I had already been claimed. Welcome home, Eldritch's voice growled from the depths of the void, a promise laced with malice. You've always belonged to me. And just as darkness closed in, my world shattered, leaving a silence so suffocating that for a moment, the only sound I could hear was the thundering of my own heartbeat, a grim echo of life bleeding into the abyss. The silence, the suffocating kind, cradled me in its cold embrace, a stillness that rang louder than a funeral bell. Panic surged within me as the darkness thickened, wrapping around my senses like a heavy fog. It felt alive, pulsating with a hunger that taunted my very being. Let go, a voice murmured from the depths, coiling around my throat with an icy grip. Why fight the inevitable? I opened my eyes, only to find myself surrounded by an endless expanse of black which seemed to ripple and breathe, a grotesque heartbeat echoing through the void. My left wrist, where the frigid hand had clutched me, burned with agonizing heat, marking a connection I couldn't comprehend. Help me, came the faint echo again, too distorted to explain, drifting like smoke in an unforgiving wind. I searched for the source, half hoping it would lead me to the girl, fearful of the warnings shed imparted. But I found only shadows, memories of torment manifesting before my eyes. Each reflection told a tale of despair, an intricate web of what had once been alive but was now simply flesh puppeteering through oblivion. Every step I took felt wrong, an invocation of the despair that thrived on my fear. The once vibrant corridor now warped into a series of twisted, grotesque landscapes that shifted around me, altering the very fabric of reality. It was a circus of horrors where laughter twisted into screams, and bright colors turned sinister, each hue imbued with dread. Join us, the whispers grew louder, resonating through me like a symphony of anguish. Faces appeared one by one, their features stretched into ghastly expressions of horror, gaping mouths mouthing my name, help us. These unsettling figures rose and fell with the undulating shadows, their figures mirroring the chaos deep within my soul. Then, abruptly, the surroundings began to morph, colors swirling intensively. I gripped my head, my temples pounding with each heartbeat that echoed louder than the last. How much longer could I endure this torment? Suddenly, from the center of the tormentors, the beckoning shadows, there emerged a single blackened mirror, untouched by the chaos. Drawn inexplicably toward it, I felt a gravitational force pull me closer, a warmth overlaying the cold enveloping me. A quiet screaming resonated through it, a luring tone that transcended fear, desperate and tender, as though it belonged to someone I desperately sought to save. Look into it, the voice, now sultry as smoke, hissed. See the truth, compelled. I reached out a trembling hand, touching the cool surface, and instantly, images flashed like lightning. I saw the girl, but she was no longer alone. Within that mirror was an altar of sorrow. The prominent figure of Eldritch hovered behind her, a sinister specter that cast an imposing shadow. He reached for her, fingers extending through the glass, snaking toward her as if to consume her very essence. Run! I shouted, but my voice was muffled, swallowed by the very air I breathed. The reflected girl seemed out of reach, unaware of her imminent fate. I screamed again, but my heart sank as my voice dissipated into nothingness, a whisper lost in a storm. From behind, I felt the prickling sensation of eyes boring into my back, and I turned to find the twisted figures rearranging themselves, slipping between dimensions, growing restless with annoyance. The sense of my time running out clawed at my throat. Join us, little soul, came the haunting chorus once more, the voices swirling like a tempest, melding with the darkness and pulling me closer to its depths. Swallowing my fear, I lunged back toward the mirror, pressing my palms against the cool surface, desperate to unite with the girl that flickered like fire in my memory. I won't fail you. But before I could be pulled through, Eldritch's chilling presence surged, expanding like a storm. You wish to intervene? He hissed, voice laced with malice, spilling through my thoughts like acid. You'll pay the price for your defiance. A visceral pain sliced through my chest, my breath hitching as icy tendrils of darkness gripped my heart. The altar of shadows quaked, and I caught sight of the girl one last time. Her eyes locked with mine, wide with pleading terror, before a deafening shatter vibrated through the air. No! I screamed, terror igniting in my core. The darkness coiled tighter, and the void swallowed her anguished face, her last cry a piercing echo in the recesses of my mind. It dissolved like mist, leaving nothing but an unbearable weight of silence. The voice, Eldritch's voice, reverberated through the chamber, thick and guttural. You are too late, my dear. But fear not. He paused, an ominous laugh escaping his lips, echoing endlessly around me. Your sacrifice may yet free her. I turned to run, every instinct screaming as I felt the air grow thicker, suffocating, as if the darkness were tightening its hold for the final act. Fear surged through me, its chill wrapping around my throat, and the figures surged closer, their cries merging once more into an agonizing crescendo. No! I shouted, propelled by primal instinct, racing with no direction but forward, only to feel anchoring chains of shadows pulling me back, digging into my flesh with razor-sharp precision. Desperation and despair entwined tightly within me, the line between choice and fate disintegrating as I struggled against the grim tide. It was then that I stumbled upon a heavy door, carved with grotesque imagery that twisted my stomach into knots, images of sacrifice and release. As I grasped the handle, a low growl echoed behind me. Eldritch loomed in the haze, his form expanding, a dark maw splitting wide. Leave. Join her while you still can. The shadows bled through the door, cold and relentless. With a final, frantic heave, I turned the handle, slamming the door shut just as a rush of wind swept across my back, but, as the door locked tightly, I realized too late behind me, the laughter, mocking and filled with rage, roared out. And then, as silence fell once more, I heard Ida's soft, repeated whisper in the hush, reverberating through my bones, you think you can escape? You belong to me. The whisper hung thick in the air, curling around me like a snake, squeezing tighter with each heartbeat. I stood frozen in that small, dimly lit room, the cold door still vibrating where I had slammed it shut. My hands trembled as dread coursed through my veins, the vision of the girl fading into the abyss behind the mirror still echoing in my mind. Eldritch, I mouthed, testing the name that rolled off my tongue like poison. It felt wrong, an invocation that summoned the heavier shadows now creeping along the edges of my consciousness. They writhed and twisted, eager to claim me, to imprison me in their grip of despair. The walls appeared to pulse with life, thick veins of darkness writhing like worms beneath the surface. The very foundation of the room seemed to tremble, vibrating with the chaotic energy of unseen forces that pressed against the confines of reality. I wanted to scream, but the sound lodged deep in my throat. With a deep breath, I turned away from the door, scanning my surroundings for an escape, a window, a vent, anything. But the room felt impossibly small, shrinking around me as the shadows surged ever closer, thirsting for my fear. In the corners, I saw grotesque faces flicker and twist, shadows sporting gaping mouths that formed mute cries of anguish. I staggered backward and collided with something solid, a table scattered with odd relics, a broken clock, a dusty mirror, and a series of tattered dolls, their glassy eyes wide and devoid of life, all seeming to watch me intently. I picked up the clock, its hands frozen in sullen torment at 3:15, the minute hand stuck on the edge of a time long lost. I dropped it, as if it might signal an alarm, but the dull thud against the floor was lost in the echo of my heartbeat, the relentless reminder of my own mortality. Help me, the voice drifted again, softer this time, almost tender, a sweet despair that sent chills dancing along my skin. I turned toward the source of the sound, a corner shrouded in shadow, where the light seemed to bend and break. Shadows billowed like smoke, entwining, and out of that murkiness stepped a figure. At first, I thought it was the girl from the mirror, but as she stepped into the meager light, I realized with horror that this was not her. This was something far worse. Her face, though hauntingly similar, was twisted and marred, her eyes socketed in a darkness that held sorrow within sorrow. "Please, help me," she begged, her voice cracking as desperation filled the air. Her mouth formed a smile, but it was fractured, jagged. It was as if she had once been beautiful, a fleeting memory of innocence lost to the void that devoured her essence. That I took a cautious step forward, confusion biting at my resolve. I could feel Eldritch stirring behind the door, becoming more restless in my hesitation. "What are you?" I managed to whisper, unease curling in the pit of my stomach. Her smile faltered. "I am what he has made of me. I was lost to the shadows, to Eldritch unmade, like all who came before. But you can save yourself. You must reclaim your light." "How?" My voice trembled, choked by uncertainty and fear. I was drawn to her words, desperate for any ray of hope in this damnable place. "Find the relic, the scarf that binds his power. It can break the connection." But before she could finish, shadows surged forward from the corners of the room, pooling around her feet. She looked back over her shoulder, terror ripping through her features, her words fading as tendrils of dark whirled about her like serpents. "Find it. You're the only." In an instant, she was pulled back into the dark, her ghastly wail echoing horrifically, merging with the oppressive myriad of voices demanding my demise. My heart raced, each pulse a desperate plea to escape. I had to move, to act. I turned to the table, shuffling through the items in a frenzy, scouring for anything they might have left behind. The dolls stared me down, their expressions taunting my futile efforts, black shadows creeping ever closer to ensnare me. Then my fingers brushed against a soft fabric. I pulled back a tattered scarf, its fibers seemingly woven from shadows and light. It shimmered unnaturally, almost alive, and the moment my skin met its surface, a surge of energy blasted through me, a powerful connection that entwined with my restless fears. The room twisted, reality bent and warped like a funhouse mirror. With the scarf draped around my fingers, an overwhelming clarity flooded my mind. Eldritch's voice bounced against the walls, a dark melody of rage spilling from behind the locked door. "Foolish child. You cannot escape." But in that instant, I felt a deep burn in my heart, as if the scarf had sparked something within me, an awakening. A connection to everything that had ever been lost. "Light!" I cried out, feeling the urge to pull it around me like a shroud. "I will not be your puppet." But just as I began to summon the strength within the fabric, the locked door erupted, splintering, a crack wide enough for a bellow of cold wind to waft through. Eldritch loomed larger than ever, his deep, void-like eyes fixated on me, filled with wrath and undeniable hunger. "Give it to me!" he roared, the very air thickening with intensity. I clutched the scarf tightly, now a lifeline draped across my body. My reflection in the shards of glass scattered across the floor took a sinister form, the image of Eldritch blending into my own, a grotesque mirror of fate melding reality with shadow. "Return to me what's mine." As the shadows lunged forward, I had one choice left: to fight back or to succumb. I gathered the light pulsing within the scarf, a last flicker of hope in a world consumed by nightmares, and as the floor beneath me began to split open, darkness seeping through the cracks, I thrust the scarf toward Eldritch, feeling the surge of power course through me once more, a desperate plea for salvation. "Take it. This ends now." But just as my determination culminated in action, the ground split open, swallowing everything into a chasm of obsidian and screams, leaving the air thick with despair. "Welcome to your fate." Eldritch's laughter echoed into the abyss, and just before the darkness overtook me, I heard the girl's voice whisper again, "Don't let go," and then, silence. Though the silence enveloped me, it was not the kind that brought peace, rather, it thrummed with a palpable tension, as if the very air was tainted by the violence of what had just transpired. I found myself suspended in a void, weightless yet aware of the darkness that curled around me, clawing at my sanity with slithering fingers of dread. As I drifted in that unsettling stillness, I strained to grasp the final moments, the fabric of the scarf burning with the heat of eldritch energy, the wicked laughter of the entity, and the haunting plea of the girl who had been lost. I could feel remnants of its descent into the frigid depths of oblivion coursing through me, a chill creeping into my very essence, binding my fate to the darkness. Suddenly, the sensation of falling pierced through my numbness, and with it, a sound began to emerge. The echoing thuds of my own heartbeat melded with the distant murmurs that beckoned me back, luring me from the void. I felt myself being pulled upwards, the shadows receding slightly as a light flickered in the distance, forming a narrow corridor lined with shattered mirrors reflecting fractured glimpses of myself. I staggered as I emerged into the light, the sudden brightness scorching my eyes, forcing a wince from my lips. The corridor was filled with the remnants of memories that felt like poison, those tattered dolls, whispers of long-forgotten laughter, and echoes of cries lost to time. I could hardly think, overwhelmed by the overlapping visions that crashed over me. "Find the relic," the girl's voice echoed softly, but as I turned, that fleeting light began to flicker, casting unnerving shadows that danced menacingly along the walls. The laughter of eldritch morphed into thin, mocking giggles, fluttering around my ears. "Return what is mine," the words spiraled through the air, thickening the oppressive atmosphere. Panic surged anew, and I stumbled forward. Out of the corner of my eye, I spotted those dolls again, arranged eerily in a circle, their painted faces fixed in expressions of agony. My pulse quickened. There was something compelling about them, something that felt like a twisted invitation beneath their glassy facade. "What do you want from me?" I cried out, my voice cutting through the oppressive chant of shadows that surrounded me. The dolls remained silent, yet a sense of impending doom crackled in their presence, like a storm brewing just out of sight. Out of nowhere, the frontmost doll, its face eerily smeared with black stain, seemed to twitch, a faint lifelike gesture that sent shivers cascading down my spine. "We collect the lost," it whispered, lips barely moving as if the sound surged directly from the air around me. "You are one of us now." No. I gasped, backing away. The walls pulsated once more, shadows curling around me, coaxing tendrils of darkness that threatened to pull me back toward Eldritch. Hungry for my fear like a beast starved for months, I dashed off into the labyrinthine corridor, but the air twisted, the reflections in the mirrors warping before me, distorting my features into grotesque parodies. I reached a fork in the pathway and hesitated, torn between paths that seemed equally devoid of reason. "Save yourself," whispered a chorus of hushed voices. A looming dread filled my chest as the realization sank in. The girl, the dolls, and all the wretched souls trapped here only wanted one thing: me surrender. The red flicker of hope surged again as I turned towards a path shimmering faintly with elusive light, a path that hinted at escape. Racing towards it, I felt the weight of dozens of unseen eyes upon me, their unyielding gazes filled with envy and longing. Then, just as I was about to dive into the glow, a horrific sound shattered the air, a clamoring, scraping, gnawing noise that vibrated through the walls like a reel of tortured screams. The intensity of the dread became almost unbearable, and I froze as a shadow coalesced into a shape far more familiar. The girl, her face etched with agony, her body marked with throbbing darkness. "Please don't," she cried, her voice strangled, echoing like a warning barely tethered to this realm. "You can't follow the light, it's a trap. You must challenge Eldritch first." The walls trembled, and the air thickened with despair again. I felt the rush of fear pulling me back like an undertow. Behind me, the mirror surfaces rippled, and I could sense the creature invigorating its hold on reality, hungry for me once more. "Choose," she shrieked, "the light or the voice. One will end your pain while the other." Before the words could settle, the darkness swelled, swallowed her scream, and my instincts kicked in. I dashed towards the glimmering path, desperate to break free from the suffocating grip clenching around my heart. Yet, just as I crossed the threshold, an agonizing howl erupted from the shadows, echoing against the bone of the walls, a sound that made my heart stutter, a sound that pushed the light away, plunging me back into darkness. In that heartbeat, something wrapped around my ankle like iron chains, pulling me down, deeper into the abyss. "Let me go!" I screamed with all my might, as Eldritch's breath fanned against my hair, the creeping shadows at my back rising like a beast ready to pounce. Then, as I braced for the eternal tomb of oblivion, a sliver of the scarf slipped from my grasp, fluttering into the air like the last remnant of my hopes. Do not let it go. Echoed through the void, as the laughter of Eldritch crescendoed, and I was taken. Time flowed differently in the depths of darkness, an ebb and flow governed by the pulse of terror and dread that coursed through my veins. I found myself in a space that defied comprehension, a swirling vortex of thoughts and shadows colliding around me like past lives, lost souls intertwining within a dance of despair. My mind whirled with memories, echoes of the girl's haunting voice urging me to fight, to reclaim my light, but the enormity of Eldritch's presence loomed over me like a storm cloud, drawing me deeper into his maw. That I was falling, thrust into the inky blackness where the whispers became a howling tempest, swirling around me, insidious in nature. Yet beneath the cacophony, I felt the weight of the scarf, picking at the edges of my soul, a reminder of warmth amidst the chill. "You cannot escape me," Eldritch's voice rumbled through the layers of darkness, an insidious melody that wrapped its claws around my heart. "You've already accepted your fate." Amidst the shadows, I saw her face again, the girl, her eyes wide with horror as shadows twisted around her like serpents. "Help!" she pleaded, a sound muted by the rapids of darkness. With every heartbeat, I felt the pull, the connection. "Find the light!" I screamed, but the sound was swallowed by Eldritch's laughter, bouncing off the walls of reality. As if drawn by desperation, I felt the remnants of the scarf once more, a sliver weaving its tendrils through the chaos. I grasped at it, my fingers desperate to reclaim its energy, its essence. Suddenly, the shadows fragmented around me like shards of glass, and I stumbled into a vision, a relentless montage of histories woven into one continuous narrative. The specters that filled the void morphed into figures I recognized, friends, loved ones, faces twisted by despair, their hollow eyes pleading for release. They coiled around me, whispering my name, urging me to embrace the insatiable darkness. No. I shouted, grounding myself. "This isn't who I am." My voice echoed, reverberating through the chaos. "I will not surrender." I hurled the remnants of the scarf into the depths of the darkness. "You will not claim me." But just as I spoke, shapes began to emerge from the shadows, the reflection of Eldritch, a grotesque visage, shrouded in the blackest void, mocking me with chilling intimacy. "You think you can defy me, little soul? This is your home now." The shadows around him pulsed ominously, transforming into the anguished cries of those lost, an anthem of devastation that pressed against my mind like a vice, yet deep within, a flicker ignited. "I am not yours to command," I roared, summoning the energy that surged through the scarf remnants, amplifying the vibrations of my heart. Light erupted around me, a brilliant brilliance that fractured the void, sending a pulse through the darkness, scattering the attentive shadows that clung to my very being. "Your light is feeble." Eldritch howled, but I pushed against his malevolence, driving the light forward, forcing it to expand, driving back the shadows, merging my spirit with the remnants of hope. "I am the light." I felt the presence of the girl standing beside me, her strength intertwining with mine as our energies crackled in synchronization. "I will not let you claim me. Together, we can break free." And at that moment of defiance, the darkness turned violent, swirling, chaotic and tempestuous. I could see Eldritch's eyes blaze in fury, and in that chaotic dance of shadow and light, the air ignited with energy, and the barrier began to fracture. The mirrors around me shattered with reverberating cracks, cascading into a torrent of scraps, each shard a vision of reality collapsing, each reflecting the truth that we were more than mere puppets in Eldritch's game. But then, something horrifying occurred. As the light expanded, for a fleeting instant, I glimpsed my own reflection among the shards, a grin twisted with malevolence, eyes filled with darkness, an image that echoed with familiarity. I felt a knot in my stomach as a realization pressed against my consciousness. You were meant to be one of us. Eldritch breathed, the shadows curling around each word. You belong here, where fear feeds, where despair thrives. Embrace it. No. I screamed at the shadows, no longer backing down, and I thrust my hands forward. The scarf pulsed with energy, detonating in a blinding flash that illuminated the void like a supernova. I choose to fight. Eldritch's laughter morphed into rage, reverberating through the realm. You cannot outrun your essence. But as I surged forward with the light, I could feel the gilded remnants of hope wrapped around me, igniting the very shadows of dread and culling them like weeds. Let her go. Came a voice so familiar from the darkness, resonating with authority. A silhouette raced through the chaos, a figure consumed with light and truth. It was the girl. Grab my hand. She shouted, urgency coating her words, and I plunged into the remnants of vivid light around me. Time slowed, shadows clawed, but I reached out desperately, grasping her hand, feeling the warmth of connection once more. Together, we summoned that burst of energy, binding it with our will, propelling it forward against the darkness. And just before the shadows devoured us whole, a final scream erupted, a sound that shattered the fabric of void, sending us into oblivion. The rush of light washed over me, brilliance so intense that it consumed everything I had ever been. I collapsed under its weight, feeling the shadows of despair scream their final cries as they were ripped away. And just like that, I was freed. As my senses flooded back, I gasped, panting in an unfamiliar land, blinded momentarily as the sun poured forth its gentle embrace. A meadow stretched before me, bathed in sunlight, vibrant wildflowers swaying delicately in the breeze. I felt free, but as the bloom of hope began to unfurl in my heart, dread crawled beneath the surface, whispering of things unsaid. But before I could truly absorb my surroundings, a familiar chilling breath kissed my neck. I turned, heart pounding, not to see the expanse of freedom before me but a figure cloaked in shadows, grinning wickedly. Welcome home, the voice slithered. And as the warmth of the sun began to fade, darkness smeared the edge of my vision, lingering like an unwelcome specter, and I realized, with horrifying clarity, that the cycle had only just begun. I would never escape his grasp. Join us, whispered the shadows, echoing my every fear, and as their laughter rose, I knew deep within my heart I was never truly free.